Ah, you've returned. It's been a while, hasn't it? Yes, I must say, I've been wondering when you all would return again. So, came for another story, I'm sure. Well, gather around. Let me find one for you. Seems like I found one that could work. You know, a lot of folks like to think that, no matter what, everyone will make it to the finish line. That they'll all survive and be happy in the sunset. Well, unfortunately, that's not always the case. You see, when you have multiple worlds, you're bound to have different opportunities and events. Some good, and some terrible. This universe, from the Redneck 49 universe, is one of those sorrowful ones. However, perhaps there would be a light at the end of this painful tunnel. So, let us dive into this story of two broken hearts made one. Down in the depths of hell, thunder cracked and lightning flashed across the sky over the Pride Ring as heavy rain poured down over Imp City. The darkness brought about by the raging storm, casting a gloomy atmosphere over the entire city and its inhabitants. However, in the office building of the Immediate Murder Professionals, better known as IMP, the gloomy atmosphere was barely even noticed by the members of the team of assassins, or what was left of them. Inside the IMP office, everything was eerily quiet. The only sounds coming from both the squeaking ceiling fan and the rumble of thunder from outside. The door to Blitz's office stood ajar, and sitting at the center, behind the dark, large desk, was Moxie. The shorter, white-haired imp sat in a large plush chair, working on a stack of paperwork. His movements were almost mechanical, as he looked over one paper, signed its contents, or wrote down a few notes, before setting it on top of another stack of papers, and moved on to the next. This wasn't where he was supposed to be. He knew that. He had told himself time and time again that he wasn't supposed to be sitting in this chair. Yet here he was, despite this. And it had been that way ever since that fateful day a month ago. His hands stilled mid-stroke, as the images of that day flooded his mind once again. It had just been another normal day at the office. Loona was at her receptionist's desk slacking off on her phone. Millie was polishing her beloved battle axe, and Moxie was once again arguing with Blitz about his obsessive spending habits with the company's limited budget over ridiculous things that he claimed would benefit the company. Sometime later, Loona answered a call with her usual uncaring attitude and informed that a client wanted them to kill someone up on Earth, offering a large sum of cash even if they all went. Moxie had found it odd that the client had asked for all of them to go on the hit, but Blitz was all too happy, calling it one big family trip. Little did any of them know what had really awaited them once they reached the location they were told to go. When they arrived, They found themselves inside an abandoned building that looked like it had been a factory of some kind back in the day. Before they could even begin searching for their target, however, a large group of agents suddenly appeared and surrounded them. At first, they all thought it was just the damn dork agents again, and believed it was going to be another one-sided slaughter like before. However, they soon found out that they weren't the same agents from before. These agents were smarter, more skilled, and more prepared. Before any of them knew what was happening, some of the agents tossed some metal canisters that shot out clouds of smoke that not only obscured their vision, but also burned their skin, not from chemicals, but some sort of holy essence. Moxie remembered how they were almost completely disarmed instantly when one agent came from the smoke and sliced off the backpack of weapons Blitz carried, before taking it away, leaving only Blitz's flintlock, Millie's axe, and his rifle. It was only by chance that Loona still held the book in her hands at the time, otherwise they'd have no way to escape. Just like the dorks, the agents attacked them with various kinds of weapons, but these guys proved tougher to deal with and more capable of fighting than the dorks had been. Even Loona had trouble dealing with them, despite her enhanced speed and strength. While they had managed to take down a few of the agents, the rest were slowly gaining the upper hand as they dodged their attacks and were able to land a few small blows on each of them. Outnumbered, running low on ammunition and strength waning from the smoke around them, Blitz called for them to retreat. However, that was easier said than done as agents blocked the exits, and more agents continued to bombard them with attacks, keeping them from opening the portal back to hell. Luckily, Millie had noticed a weak spot in a wall and managed to break through it with her axe, giving them a chance to escape the area. Of course, the agents hadn't given up as they chased them through the building. Eventually, they managed to barricade themselves inside an old storage room, with Blitz and Millie holding the door, while Loona worked on opening the portal and Moxie nearby to cover her. Thankfully, it didn't take long to summon the portal, though it was still a struggle as both the exhaustion from fighting and the effects of the smoke had left them all weakened. No sooner had she stepped through, Loona had fallen to her hands and knees gasping for breath, her body trembling. Moxie had followed, barely staying on his own hooves, and weakly called for the others to hurry as the portal was already beginning to close. However, as Blitz and Millie made a break for the portal, several agents had suddenly burst through the ceiling and landed right between them and the portal, blocking their way. Moxie had wanted to help, but no sooner had he taken a single step, his legs chose then and there to give out on him, sending him to the floor on his hands and knees beside Loona, who had fallen to her side unconscious. Raising his head weakly through blurry vision, he saw the agents slowly surrounding Blitz and Millie through the slowly closing portal. Blitz and Millie both turned their heads to meet his gaze. Millie looked at him with tears in her eyes and a look of regret, mouthing an apology to him. Blitz looked at him with a resigned, resolute expression, both having acknowledged the inevitable. "Take care of each other, Mox," Blitz had called out to him, his voice more serious than Moxie had ever heard it before. The last thing Moxie saw before his vision faded was Blitz and Millie turning to face the agents before the portal closed. He had awoken over 2 hours later in a daze. When his mind rebooted, Moxie remembered what happened and panic flooded his system. Despite his still weakened body, he had quickly woken up Loona and had her open the portal, while he grabbed some weapons. When they stepped through the portal, they saw red blood stains all over the room, but what they saw in the center of the room made their blood run cold. A pool of pitch-black blood on the floor, with both Millie's battle axe and one of Blitz's horns lying within it. The imp and the hellhound had stood frozen in shock when they saw this. Afterwards, they had looked for signs that they were still alive, but while the agents' bodies were gone, having been dragged away, if the trails of blood were anything to go off of, there was no indication of Blitz and Millie having escaped or even been moved. Loona had tried to track their scent, but they only led from the room they first escaped from to here. Nowhere else. It was as if they had just vanished. This only confirmed their worst fears, for when a demon dies in hell, their bodies remain, but if they die while outside hell, the bodies just disappear, leaving behind little to nothing. It was then they realized that Blitz and Millie were truly gone. A tear fell to the paper on the desk. Moxie sighed and wiped his eye with the back of his hand. He won't deny that he broke down and wept that day when he knew his beloved wife was dead. He had blamed himself, feeling he should have done more to protect her, only to be too weak to do anything while she fought tooth and nail to the end. It wasn't just Millie he had wept for, though. Moxie had wept for Blitz as well. Despite their differences, despite their arguments, Moxie had great respect for Blitz ever since the day they met back in the prison cell. Blitz may have been reckless, impulsive, and to be frank, an idiot at times, but his heart was always in the right place and cared greatly for those he considered family. To Moxie, losing Blitz wasn't just like losing an employer or even like losing a friend. It was like losing a brother. Thinking of Blitz, Moxie looked to his left. His eyes landed on the bottom drawer of the desk. Hesitantly, he reached down and pulled the drawer open. Lying inside was a lone, folded letter with his name written in messy print on top. He picked up the letter and stared at it in his hands, the paper stained with his past tears. The letter was a final gift from Blitz. One that was for Moxie should a day such as this ever come to pass. Moxie still remembered the day Blitz had informed him of this.
Listen, Mox, if anything ever happens to me, then look inside this drawer,
Blitz informed, pointing to the large bottom drawer built into the left side of his desk.
It's important that you get what's inside, so make sure you do if the worst ends up happening, and I don't come back one of these days.
Moxie raised an eyebrow at this, confused as to what Blitz was talking about.
Okay, but what exactly is it you have in there, sir?
He asked, confused by Blitz's all-too-familiar veg expression. Blitz gave him his usual carefree smile in response.
Just a little something to make sure everything that is important to me is taken care of when I'm not around.
He then walked over and smacked Moxie on the back a few times.
Don't worry about it too much, Mox. I don't intend on dying anytime soon, so don't get your panties in a twist. Just keep this in mind if push comes to shove, right? Yes, sir. Of course,
Moxie replied, glancing back towards the drawer in question.
But what is... Great, Mox, thanks. Knew I could count on you.
Blitz interrupted, slapping Moxie on the back one last time before grabbing him by the back of his collar and heading for the door.
Now let's not waste any more time. We got assholes to kill.
Moxie sniffed as he remembered that day. He had been so confused back then, not knowing what Blitz had planned or why it was so important to him that Moxie got it, but he had been so sure that such a day would never come, believing his boss was far too stubborn and damn lucky to be killed one day. How much Moxie hated himself for such stupid and careless thoughts. Now here he was, sitting in his late boss's chair, having opened the drawer of his desk and found his lone letter waiting for him inside. The words seemed to stare up at him, mockingly, silently telling him this was the last thing he would ever get from his boss, and the final words he would ever receive from him again. He read the letter once more for the 100th time since he first discovered it.
Dear Moxie, if you're reading this letter, then that means my luck has finally run out. I don't know what happened to lead up to you having to find this letter, whether it was me pissing off the wrong guy down there in hell, or me taking on a job even I couldn't handle. Either way, I'm undoubtedly not there anymore. That isn't the point, though. What's important is this. The business is yours now. That's right, I'm leaving my beloved company in your hands. Despite all the times I've given you a hard time for being a prude or blaming you for things that went wrong, some of which actually was your fault, I might add, I know you have what it takes to run this company. Admittedly, even better than I ever could. So, I'm leaving it in your hands. Do whatever you feel is necessary to keep this company alive. Who knows? Maybe you'll make the company thrive better than it ever was before, especially under my command. Hey, there's something else I need you to do. Something 100 times more important than anything else, even the company. I know it's a lot for me to ask on top of running the company, but I hope you'll do this for me as well. Please, take care of Loona while I'm gone. I know you two don't always see eye to eye, but please, I beg you, look after my little girl. Despite how protective I've been with her ever since I adopted her, I know she's a strong, independent woman, but I have no doubt she'll be more than capable of moving on without me. However, I know that deep down she's going to be hurting over the loss of her old man. So please, just be there for her and help her through the tough times while I'm not there, okay? You asked me what it was when I told you about getting this letter from the drawer if something were to happen. Well, the answer is, this is my final wish. Please, despite the history you two have had in the past, take care of my Loona. I can rest in peace knowing you're there, watching over her. I hope you can find it in your heart to do this for me, Mox. Not as an employee for his boss, but as a good friend. See you later, Mox. Take care of yourself. Your awesome boss and friend, Blitz Wire.
No matter how many times Moxie read the letter, a part of him still didn't want to accept it. Didn't want to acknowledge the fact that his boss was gone. It was something that didn't seem possible. Blitz may have had a lot of faults, but he was also one of the strongest and toughest demons Moxie has ever known. The thought of him falling to someone like those damn demon-obsessed agents was something that shouldn't be possible. Yet here Moxie was, sitting at Blitz's desk and holding the letter that contained the very last words he would ever receive from his boss, his friend. Moxie sighed and leaned back in the chair, his chair now, and looked around at the paperwork on his desk. He had done his best this past month to keep the business running. Sure, they were still not doing well, but he's managed to keep them from slipping any further into the red than they already have. Also, with the jobs that he's received, he's managed to make deals with clients for better pay for each successful hit. While they may not be making a lot more money than before, he knew that as long as they continue to manage money and strategize the hits so as not to waste any unnecessary resources, he can get the company turned around. I swear, sir, Moxie muttered to himself, his grip tightening on the letter's edges slightly. I will keep this company running, whatever it takes. With that, he let out a soft sigh before folding up the letter once more and setting it up to the side. He picked up his pen and was about to resume working on the paperwork when an alarm suddenly went off on his phone, sitting to his left on the desk. Picking it up, a reminder showed that it was 10 minutes from closing time. Seeing it was indeed 10 minutes from 5 o'clock, Moxie shut off the notification and stuffed his phone in his shirt pocket. Finish this up tomorrow, he told himself as he pushed back from the desk and hopped down from his chair. With that, he began gathering all his things and cleaning up his work, which was mostly just filing the unfinished paperwork away in the desk drawers, while the finished papers were filed away in a cabinet. After making sure the grimoire was locked securely inside the safe, Moxie made his way to the door. He grabbed his jacket from the coat rack and slipped it on, before reaching to turn out the lights. However, he stopped when his gaze landed on a picture hanging on the wall. It showed him, Blitz, Millie, and Loona all together in a group photo. Blitz and Millie smiled happily for the camera, while Moxie glared up at Blitz as he ruffled his hair, and Loona had a bored expression while she looked at her phone. It was one of the last photos that they ever took together. Moxie always thought such things were inappropriate since he always believed they should keep up a professional attitude in the workplace. But now he wished he had been more open to the idea of such moments, having never realized just how important they were until now. Moxie bit his lip, feeling his heart ache with regret, before he closed his eyes and took a deep breath, reminding himself to stay strong and keep moving forward. For them. With that, he turned off the lights and made his way out of the office. Outside in the reception area, Moxie looked around. While it was mostly the same as it always was, He had managed to get the long overdue cracks and wet stains fixed up and removed from the walls and ceiling, and patched up some of the damaged furniture as well, making the place look at least a little more visually appealing. Plus, having been able to clean and freshen up the office after years of neglect helped to satisfy his desire for cleanliness. Moxie looked to his left, and his gaze landed on the receptionist's desk near his office. There, he saw Loona sitting in her chair and, as usual, scrolling on her phone with a bored expression on her face. However, Moxie could see that it wasn't the same as it once was. He remembered how Loona had been so angry at the knowledge that Blitz and Millie had been killed. She had gone into a rage, cursing at the top of her lungs and throwing everything she could get her hands on despite her injured and weakened state at the time. Moxie had to replace some of the chairs in the meeting room when Loona demolished them in her anger. There had been a moment when she had even blamed him for what happened, sparking an argument between them, each blaming the other for not trying harder to help or being too weak to fight back. However, in the end, the argument was short-lived as they both knew deep down neither one could have done anything to help at the time, not in the condition they were in. Since then, Loona hasn't said much to him other than when she's informed him about new hit requests from clients, or when he called her to open the portal after he finished a hit, and mostly just kept to herself. Before, he would have been glad not to hear her constantly insulting or belittling him, or just talking in general if he was being honest. But after what had happened, he knew she was actually upset as well, but was trying not to show it. Despite their past history, Blitz had asked him to watch out for Loona, so that's what he was going to do. Besides, how could he, in good conscience, just leave her to grieve on her own after losing her father like that? No one deserved that. "Time to close up for the day, Loona," Moxie announced, closing his office door behind him. "About fucking time," Loona replied as she pushed away from her desk and stood up. She shoved her chair back against the wall as she stepped out from behind the desk, leaving her computer on like usual. "Later, fatty." She made her way to the door. Moxie tensed at the all-too-familiar nickname, but quickly relaxed, reminding himself not to let it get to him. He couldn't let himself get upset at this, especially not now that it was just the two of them. "Enjoy your weekend, Loona," he replied, with a small smile and giving a light wave. "See you on Monday, bright and early." Yeah, whatever," Loona replied, not looking back and giving a dismissive wave, before she pulled open the door and stepped out, slamming the door shut behind her. After she left, Moxie sighed and lightly shook his head. He then went over and shut off Loona's computer for the night, before going about the office and shutting off all the lights, then making his way to the door. Once out in the hall, he closed and locked the door and was about to leave, but stopped and stayed where he stood. He looked up at the door, up to the office door's logo, IMP Headquarters. Moxie felt his heart ache again, as he remembered the day Blitz first wrote it shortly after purchasing it, and the look of utter pride and joy on his face as he did. He was so happy to have his own business like he always wanted. A business that was now Moxie's. Moxie let out a sad sigh, before he turned and began making his way down the hall to the elevator. "20 minutes later, Moxie opened the door to his apartment and stepped inside, closing the door with a soft click and locking it. He turned back and, like many times before, looked around the small, simple apartment he and Millie once shared, but was now his alone. He let out a sad sigh and took off his jacket, hanging it up on the coat rack by the door. As he did, he looked to his wedding ring and, out of habit, twisted it a few times on his finger, with a sad, longing look in his eyes. A moment later, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath, before turning and making his way towards the kitchen. A little more than an hour and a half later, Moxie finished with his nightly routine. A quick dinner, did the laundry, showered, and other miscellaneous nighttime deeds. Now he sat on the edge of his bed, a look of deep thought on his face as he thought about Loona. Ever since the incident, he had spent night after night trying to think of something he could do to help her through her grief. He knew she was just trying to hold it back and appeared to be the same tough and uncaring hellhound she had always been. He couldn't blame her for trying not to let it show. He himself has tried his best to hold in his grief to keep going, for both Blitz and Millie. However, while he was trying to be strong and move on, he felt Loona was just trying to hold in her grief and hide it, and that wasn't good for her to do to herself. He had to find a way to get her to open up and let out her feelings. But how? They never had the best relationship before everything happened. Hell, they had pretty much hated each other for years, so it's not like she would just come out and talk to him like they were old friends. Regardless, he had to try and find some way to get through to her. However, no matter how hard he tried to be kind and open to her, she always remained distant with him. Moxie let out a groan and placed his hand against his forehead and shook his head lightly. He then turned his head and looked to a small table beside the bed. There sat a framed photo of him and Millie on their wedding day, while Millie carrying him in her arms, a joyful smile on her face, while he had a happy but also slightly embarrassed smile on his. It was the happiest day of his life. He reached over and tentatively picked up the picture, holding it in his lap and looking longingly at it. "Oh, Millie," Moxie murmured, tracing his thumb over Millie's smiling face. "If only you were here. You always knew what to say or do to help me whenever I was lost." He sat there, staring at the photo for several more minutes before he let out a sigh and put the picture back on the table. He then got up and turned out the lights, climbed back into bed, and lay down under the covers. He laid on his back, staring up at the ceiling for several minutes before turning over on his side, his gaze landing on the spot where Millie always slept beside him. Sometimes when he blinks, he swears that he can, for the briefest second, still see her sleeping right next to him with that same adorable smile she always wore in her sleep. The same smile he would only ever see in his dreams from now on. "Good night, Millie," Moxie whispered, running his hand over the empty space on the bed, before closing his eyes and drifting off to sleep.